I was happy this week. I talked with my neighbor. I've been envying this Porsche that rolls by my house, and I found out this week that the transaxle went out in it, and I was just delighted by it. During my rehabilitation, I spent the time watching World War II documentaries, an odd habit for a Quaker pacifist, but there you have it. And while brushing up on militarism, I caught myself wondering what the most dangerous day in human history might have been. I thought perhaps the day gunpowder was invented, or the day scientists unlocked the destructive power of nuclear fission, or maybe the October day in 1347 when 4 merchant ships carrying the rats that carried the fleas, that carried the Black Plague, landed in Sicily, Italy, unleashing history's most destructive pandemic, killing conservatively 1/5 of the world's population, not stopping until it occurred to people that the Black Plague wasn't defeated by prayer, or bloodletting, or self-flagellation, or giving money to the church. It was stopped only by quarantining the sick, thereby separating the healthy from the unhealthy, which stopped the spread of the Black Plague. But as dangerous as all those days were, I sometimes wonder if the most perilous day in human history was when it first occurred to someone that if they convinced others that God spoke to them and them alone, imparting rules to live by, that they could acquire the greatest power of all, the authority to tell their fellow beings what they could and could not do, how they should and shouldn't live. We've been reflecting on the topic of humanism, which we defined as having a strong interest in or regard for, concern for human welfare, values, and dignity. There are 3 foundational assertions of humanism, which affirm that 1, knowledge and wisdom are best obtained by studying the observable world using the scientific method as opposed to an appeal to divine revelation. Number 2, that humans who rose through evolution are self-aware, possessing the ability to discern right from wrong, and that our moral principles, this is number 3, are not determined by divine commandments, but by examining the results that our actions yield in the lives of real men and women. Simply put, if our actions result in happiness and well-being for ourselves and others, they are moral. If not, they are immoral. And I want to speak about the 3rd assertion this morning, that our moral principles are not determined by divine commandments, but by examining the results our actions yield in the lives of women, real people. I know this is antithetical to the historic claims of Christianity, which is traditionally held that morality originated from God, given to us through the traditions of Scripture and the church. And certainly if you wish to believe that, you're free to do so. But I am at the place in my life where that is an assertion I can no longer make. I can no longer believe that God singled out a tiny tribe of people on a sliver of land on the edge of a midland sea on one of trillions of planets to Ten Commandments for everyone for all eternity, that when followed to the letter, the divine authorship of its moral code, that makes it so. For I have noticed that almost every moral code works to the favor of those who wrote it, protecting and perpetuating their favored status. Slavery, for instance, was not a sin in the Southern Church. It was defended scripturally, though helping a slave escape was a sin considered theft. Muslim fundamentalists think it a sin for a woman to show her face, while that woman's husbands, fathers, and brothers face no such restriction. The United Methodists today are dividing in two, because one group of straight Methodists believe gay Methodists should have fewer liberties and rights. North Carolina yearly meeting in our own denomination, a yearly meeting that began nearly 325 years ago, has recently split for the same reason. Almost every moral code works to the favor of those who wrote it. If morality did originate with God, it is clear God neglected to teach us the same morality, which is why there are now 37,000 Christian denominations. And let's be honest, aren't you just a bit suspicious when someone tells you that God has told them what you should do? So I am much intrigued by the humanist assertion that right and wrong should be judged by their very real effects on real men and women. That if our actions result in the happiness and well-being of ourselves and others, we may call that a moral act. If not, it is an immoral act. But this standard is not for the morally lax or indifferent. It no longer permits us to just read a list of ancient rules, commit them to memory, and follow them scrupulously. Instead, the humanists invite us to live our lives in deep self-awareness, mindful of the real consequences of our actions. It requires discipline, our constant and continued determination to seek not only our happiness and well-being, but the happiness and well-being of others. I heard this week of a young Catholic family with 4 children. They didn't want to have any more kids, but they were torn because of their religious tradition and its teachings about family planning. So the husband went to the Catholic priest to ask his permission to receive a vasectomy. Now, I have no idea why you would go to a pastor to ask that. And let me just say that if any of the men let me release you from that obligation. But childless priest to ask his permission to receive a vasectomy. And the celibate childless priest told him, absolutely not. That would be a mortal sin. God forbids it. So he went home discouraged. The next day, he and his wife were talking with another Catholic friend who told them, oh, you went to the wrong priest. You have to go to the priest priest in the next town over, he grants permission for men to have vasectomies. And so they went to him and said, can we get a vasectomy? And the priest said, oh, yes. And they said, is it a sin? He said, no, it's not a sin. So get your vasectomy. How can we speak of God's will when two Catholic priests living 10 miles apart can't even agree what it is? And friends, it's not just the Catholics. It's all of us. It's all of us. It's even us here in this room. I'm sure we don't have, I'm sure there are points at which our morality or our understanding of God's will differs. I'm sure it is. This is the beauty, I think, of the humanist assertion that the check on our moral code is to ask ourselves, does this contribute to my happiness and the happiness of others? There is nothing so dangerous as one who claims to speak for God, who imposes their archaic, hurtful, and amoral beliefs on the rest of us, whether they are Quakers, Catholics, or Muslim. I do not believe those so quick to speak for God actually speak for God. I am not morally obligated to obey their dated dictate, whose values always seem to coincidentally mirror my own. I believe that the rightness of an action should be determined solely by its effect. If an action contributes to my happiness and well-being and the happiness and well-being of others, I will do it. If an action diminishes me or my neighbor, I will not do it. I do not want it said of me that I pursued, out of a sense of religious obligation, a course of action that harmed and hurt other people. What a dreadful legacy that would be. At one time in my life, I did such things, but no more. Now I am a humanist, a free man with a high regard for human welfare, values, and dignity. The Quakers I most admire in history and in current day. The Quakers I most admire believe the same. So I quite comfortably bear the title of Quaker and Humanist, believing our objectives are one and the same, and that objective is this: the betterment of all humanity, and not just one group within it. The betterment of all humanity, and not just one group within it. I think the second thing that happened, the first being that someone felt that they were empowered by God to tell others what to do. The second thing that followed shortly on its heels was denominationalism. So that we found ourselves gathering in like-minded groups with people who looked like us, who thought like us, who believed like us. And I have been as guilty of this as anyone. When I first came to Fairfield, I would pray regularly for God to send us good Quakers. Instead, Methodists began a rise. And Lutheran pastors, Baptists, and United Church of Christ, and agnostics, and even some atheists. Naturally, I was scandalized. And then I learned that in each of these persons are great gifts teach us.